So I was born and raised here in Lubbock. Lived here all my life. Product of a single mom. So it was very lonely growing up. My mom sometimes had 2 and 3 jobs at a time. So she was either at work and not present, or at home asleep or not present. So I was very lonely growing up. Didn't really have a lot of church friends, or didn't grow up in the church at all. So not a lot of quality friends. I always felt like I was different than everybody else. I felt like there was something about me that was, not acceptable. I was just too different. So high school was where I met a boy and thought I was in love and everything was great. And the closer I got to him, the more I felt like I was finding what I'd been looking for: the family, the love, the intimacy, all that stuff. About a year into the relationship, the violence started. He was very quiet, and that was what had attracted me to him. But the closer we got, the more I found out about his character. And I think a lot of my own insecurities started coming up. I was never the provoking type, but at that time in my life, I did try to defend myself. I think that was when my anger and suppressed rage started coming out. He wasn't going to hit me, and I wasn't going to defend myself. I wasn't going to fight back. And I knew that my dad was an abuser. I knew that that was why my mom had left him before I was born. So it started to make sense that those feelings were coming up, because that's where I come from. But I never tried to walk away. I think I was more drawn to the fact that I had somebody and that I felt the intimacy, and it felt normal. Chaos felt normal for me. So I stayed, and the closer I got to him, the further I got from my mom. And I broke curfew. Anytime I had any kind of punishment, I never had to go through with it, because she wasn't there to know if I was abiding by it anyway. I always tried to be honest, but I was a kid. So I started slipping in school, started skipping school. My grades started dropping. My whole focus was just on him, despite what was going on. I felt like a fixer. I felt like I needed to continue to support him. As mean as he was and as violent as it got, I felt like he needed me. He was drunk and hanging out with friends and wouldn't tell me where he was. I ended up waiting in his driveway for him, and he flew in the driveway drunk, mad, just at whatever. Maybe he was mad at me, I don't know. We had gotten into a fight because I didn't want to be around him when he was drunk. So we started fighting. He hit me. I was frantic. I had lost, any kind of feeling of security came out that night. It was like such a high and then such a low. And I left. I remember that drive back home just feeling like, where do I go from here? It wasn't until I found out that he had found another girl that I was like, okay, I'm done with this. At my job one day, there was a guy that was talking to a recruiter, and the idea of the Army came into the picture. And I thought, okay, what a perfect way to get away. What a perfect way to just run from little old Lubbock. And so I joined when I was 17. But joining the Army, I joined the Army to kind of go find myself, but I was also running at the same time, because I didn't process any of the stuff that I dealt with. I didn't even believe that I was at the place that I was at. I was just glad that I wasn't where I was. And it opened up a lot of doors. It opened up my eyes to me. But I was still kind of drawn back to my past. I was drawn to the history. I didn't process any of it. So it was just a new place to try to start over with the same old cycles. And quickly found alcohol a lot more. It was glamorized very heavily in the military. I can't recall a time that I drank that I didn't black out. So every time I drank, there was something dumb that took place. About a week after I got to my first duty station, I had an encounter that about 6 years later would have been revealed to me that was rape. But I didn't say anything because I was a young, lower-ranking female in a special forces unit that was predominantly male. I was told that nobody would believe me, that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that if I spoke up, I would get in trouble because he was higher ranking, and it was fraternization. So one night, about a year and a half later, hanging out with friends at the club, drinking like we always do, it was a 4-day weekend. So in this time, 4-day weekends in the military meant Thursday night drinking, Friday night drinking, Saturday night drinking, Sunday night drinking, recover on Monday, go back to work Tuesday. So I found myself behind the wheel of a car, my car, and within a mile, I had gotten the wrong lane of a divided highway, and realized I was in the wrong lane, but I turned around too late. I was kind of at the base of a hill, and a truck coming 60 miles an hour collided with me head on. And I shattered my femur, I broke 2 of my toes, broke my wrists, and my whole world had changed because I realized that my problem had affected someone else. And I got to sit in that for a while in the hospital. I couldn't walk for 6 months unassisted, and lost a lot of friends. And then about a year after that, I was doing my community service and met another boy. A couple months after we met, had my first physical encounter with him. I learned that they hit back at that point if you hit first. So I stopped physical on my part. And I was bent over the back of a couch. And he told me that his defense mechanism was to eliminate the threat. I felt stuck. I was too ashamed to walk away from that relationship. And I think, quite honestly, I felt the intimacy despite it. And then, probably knowing what I know now, I found my normal. So I just sunk more. And that was the only altercation for a while. I had deployed to Iraq, and I felt the most freedom I think I had ever felt while I was deployed to a combat zone. There was a couple of times we nearly got shot down and mortared, and actually the night before I was going home, we got mortared about 100 feet or 100 yards from where I was, and I was like, God, if you just get me home, just get me home. So I got home, and he was there with wine and flowers and the whole 9 yards. It was awesome. But a month after that, I was on my kitchen floor for 4 hours on my way out at the hands of him because he wanted my insurance policy. He thought that he was the beneficiary to my insurance policy. And I just remember laying there lifeless, helpless. I laid there literally bleeding to death. And when the paramedics finally arrived, I was told that I had 20 minutes to live. Looking back, I know it wasn't a sign, but in the moment I thought it was, because I was taking a bath and I found myself under the water, not caring if I came up or not, and my phone rang, and it was him from jail 13 days after he got put in jail after the incident. And he was a totally different person. It was an accident. He didn't understand why I hadn't called him and why I hadn't reached out. I got him out of jail. We went back home, celebrated Thanksgiving, and shoved more pain, hid more pain, put on more of a mask. It's my last day at Fort Carson. We weren't necessarily leaving yet, but my last day there, he tried again, and he told me that he didn't succeed the first time and he was gonna do it this time. He was gonna get away with it just like he did the last time. But it was the first time that I felt the hands of God on me, because everything in me wanted to reach up and take the weapon out of his hand. And I felt the hands of God holding my hands down, telling me, be still. I didn't know where it came from. I had no idea what it meant. I just heard, be still. And I just called his bluff. I told him either he was gonna stab me or put the knife down. Eventually, the cops came. They arrested him again, and I was out. I just started shoving and numbing, and at the same time I started bleeding from wounds I couldn't even see. Then I met who would later be my second husband. The violence with him started later. He was more of a charmer up front, but at the end of the day I knew I couldn't, because he wasn't in a position where he could be in a relationship. He was married, and so more shame, more guilt, more pain, more wounds, but more of a mask. It wasn't until about a year into that I was just so used to the abuse. It was more, I guess, more social and emotional at that point. The physical was kind of here and there, but it was comfortable. Right before I met him, I had found a church that I immediately found at home in, and I'd given my life over to Christ, accepted Jesus, and then I met him like probably a week later. And the closer I got to God, the further away I got from him. And I was a believer. I wasn't brought up in church or, taught the ways of the word, but something in me knew that there was, if I had been saved from the car accident, and if I had been saved from the 2 incidents with the last relationship, there was somebody out there that was looking after me. And I didn't want to pull away from God, but I didn't want to lose my husband at the same time. More violence, more abuse in all forms just continued, and I knew that there was a life that was better for me. I was consistently attending church with or without him, so I was getting deposited into, but not at the depths that I am now. But I had my prayer closet, and I was praying for his heart, I was praying for our marriage, I was praying for our family. So he decided enough was enough. He couldn't deal with his pain. I was trying to process through my pain. He wasn't willing to go to counseling. I was willing to go to counseling. So he decided enough was enough. He was ready to take us all out. Me, my daughter, and himself. And that kind of put into place my exit plan. So he went to jail and we moved home. Then I found the city, saw some familiar faces, and was like, okay, I think I'm ready. And I had already kind of convinced myself I was in a position to put myself back out into community. When I walked through those doors, I felt that same feeling that I felt every time I walked through the church doors for the first time. I was home. And I quit caring about what people thought. Every time I was in service, it was just me and God. But the feeling that I was starting to get where it was just me and him, and I could fully be myself, not caring what anybody thought or said, was just, it was a new normal that I didn't want to let go of. But I started making friends and started inviting people into my home, not really understanding what God was doing. But as I started to open up and share some of the deep-rooted things that were really, what I see now is just surface level, because I've gotten to some deep, deep things. He's just started aligning women that needed to hear what I was saying and what was being shared. And the more I opened up, the more they felt safe to open up. And it was just a domino effect of women opening up and having revelation and encounters with God that it wasn't my doing. I think just opened the door and set the table for it to take place. And so much freedom and so much liberation came from my initial community of friends. And I was convinced that I was never going back to my old ways. I found that those types of friends were what I needed. Those that were actively pursuing God, that were trying to seek out truths, being okay with their faults. That was where I needed to be. There's something being cultivated and there's something being stirred. And I love it. My heart goes out to all the ones that are struggling during this season. But I feel like He has something for all of us right now. And it's that time to get in that secret place and hear the truths, believe the truths, and then go out there and spread the truth.